I bet you were all surprised that Barry Drumore didn't. Oh, sorry, I forgot something. Oh, hi. You're here. Anyway, that's that. Now that's ended my repertoire too as well. Yeah, so I bet you're all surprised that Barry Drumore is against racism. See, the thing with Barry is that Barry Drumore is a good man. Within Barry, within Barry Drumore is a good person. He's been clouded and destroyed by his religious zealotry, his fanaticism. Now that brings us to the notion of archetypes. You know, archetypes and stereotypes are very similar things. And boy, but they're actual. Where a stereotype is something you notice, an archetype is something you work with. And these archetypes, boy, do they keep coming back in time and time again. They keep coming back time and time again. This will be a long video, so you can put your kettle on. You can put your kettle on. Somebody said he didn't like my singing yesterday, and they're giving constructive criticism. Yeah, thank you. And my channel, I'll do whatever the fuck I want. And I don't tell you how to run your channel. You don't tell me to run mine. Go get a job as a civil servant if that's how you feel. Anyway, yeah, archetypes. They always keep coming back. I often wonder if the tribe, we're very much an archetype. I can after the event last weekend, and I haven't met some of you, but in other places like Collinstown, we're absolutely an archetype, and that we are heresy. That's what I see us as. We are the Cathars. We are the Cathars reborn. We are the Gnostics. I'm not saying we have the whole same spiritual values, but we are a modern heresy. I mean, the tribe is a total heresy, and so it's funny enough. As I meet more of the tribe, I'm developing more of an interest in the Cathars. Maybe we were all reincarnated. Maybe the reason why we didn't take the transubstantiation and knew from our start in our hearts that this thing was a load of bollocks. Maybe we've been down this road before. We've been down this road before. And the archetypes, and so we're familiar in a sort of a socio-cultural archetypal sense, as we're a heresy, that we actually, oh, this is happening again. And that's probably what, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Either we're reincarnated or we have some kind of cosmic awareness to it. But the tribe is definitely an archetype. There's no doubt about that. We're definitely a heresy. And I'm not. I don't mean that in a religious sense. We're a heresy in the sense. Well, we live in an age where science and the voice of experts is the current religion. Experts are the bishops of today, the cardinals, and we are the heresy of this notion that experts should run the world, and experts are always right, and experts always know best. And the same people today who attack people like us, trust science, science. They would be the Irish ones of them. I don't know speaking in your country, but the archetype that they represent here in Ireland, if they had been around in the 1940s, would have been going, the bishops are correct. We should do whatever the bishops say. The bishops are wonderful. And you probably find that a lot of them come from the same families, that their grandparents and parents were praising the Catholic Church and the bishops. Did you read Archbishop O'Brien's letter in the Irish Independent today? Sure, I had to agree. He's a great man that the tampon is a form of a sexual device. The same ones that we on the internet they going here. Ivermectin, to use ivermectin is far right. Far right. But people use ivermectin. It doesn't work. It scientifically doesn't work. They'll be the same ones, the same archetype, the same mindset they have been reborn and recreated into. It's fascinating stuff. But you'll find that people who come in and out of your life, the same archetypes happen over and over again. Sometimes it can be more than one people. Sometimes it can be a group dynamic thing. And until you learn the lesson how to deal with the challenges that presents, they keep coming back. Like when you're saying, I'm always ending up with some woman who's fucking mad. That's because you haven't learned the lessons of her archetype, and that's why she keeps coming back. Or the woman that goes, I always marry fellas who are losers, or I always marry fellas who are completely controlling. And that's because you haven't learned the archetype, and you haven't realized, because archetypes can be very clandestine. They sneak up on you. And often by the time you recognize the archetype has returned, you're already in too deep. Or it's already difficult to get out. And you break this archetypal recurrence when you break the spell. And you realize how to deal with it properly. That you don't... Tina made a video yesterday about repelling curses. The best way to repel a curse is to not do anything. Because whatever entity has started this thing is inside them. Is beckoning. It's very Quranic. It's beckoning and goading you to get involved. Like say you change jobs, and the same asshole in a different body is in this new job. That's because you didn't effectively deal with the last asshole. Maybe even quitting the job. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I've had loads of jobs. I was a notorious job hopper. Terrible. It's just my nature. I'd get bored. I'd get a really good job, I'd be committed to it, and then after a year, I would say, I'm out of here, I'm bored. And like this would be like, I'm just how I was. Employment for me was just a source of money. I wanted money. I wanted a job. I've always said that I wanted a job. I didn't want a career. And so you might have to learn to deal with this person more effectively than the previous archetype representing them did in the previous situation. And I think if you look at the tribe, not only did we know from the start what this thing was a load of was a crock, but I think we handled the archetype very well. What we had, we held. We didn't rage. Maybe in our previous incarnations, when faced with a similar challenge, we handled it wrong. We confronted the enemy directly, and they destroyed us. We protested. We made and brought attention to us. We didn't wait, and all we had to do is just wait for this one. Just wait, and that's a lesson we learned, because we would probably destroy it, and a few weeks later, after we destroyed, things were what we wanted happened. We didn't wait long enough. And boy, did we handle this beautifully. Jesus Christ. We played this thing like a blinder and got out the other side pretty much intact, except for, we have been damaged, and we've fallen out with and stuff like that we were close to because of this thing. And maybe some of you have lost family members over the transubstantiation. But other than that, we came flying through this thing. Flying through it. And that was this reincarnation cycle. Maybe that was the lesson that we had to learn, was just wait. Maybe that's why Esther wrote a song about it. It was almost like instinctually, it was like everyone knew, just wait. I just had to, I didn't have to tell people that you were already on board with me. I'm just, we die on the hill I die on. You were on there, well, we die with you. And I'm very grateful for that. And, we instinctually knew a darkness. That song by Burzum back in the day, Burzum. When Night Falls. It's the first song on that first album, Dunkelheit. And it goes, when night falls. That's what he sings, but the lyric is, when night falls, she cloaks the world in darkness. I always thought that was a very powerful lyric. And night fell and the world was cloaked in darkness, and those of us were very aware that we were dealing with a spiritual thing here. Very aware. And we handled the archetype well. And if you have to learn from the archetypes. The archetypes are... This is why I think the re-recurrence of archetypes is proof that you do, for me, reincarnation is real, and you do live the same life over and over again. Because that's what the archetypes, and that's what the deja vus is. You need to be very careful when, there's a great, and you think of the goddess Athena, the goddess Athena, also known as Minerva to the Romans. She is the goddess of strategy and military intelligence and gathering information. And our governments all declared war on us in the last few years. They're still at war with us, although they're in chaos. They're in a retreat. They're in a kind of like a disorganized retreat right now. But when they declared war on us, I think what got us through this is we invoked that Athenian Minervan force archetype of gathering intelligence on the enemy and holding it close to you. And I think that was a big thing. We didn't run. They wanted us all out protesting because then they could mock everybody, and they did mock people. They had people who obviously had spelled words on their protest, were sent out there, who were obviously employees by either the government or the mainstream media here, to make anyone who protested look stupid. And also you'd have Sinn Féiners waving their Palestinian flags. And diverting it off into their bullshit. But we didn't fall for any of that. Instead, we learned a new way. We observed what they were up to, and we didn't try to help anybody else. We didn't... It wasn't... I don't think anyone was part of a crusade to help anyone else. Maybe some on some levels. That's not a bad thing in of itself. But I think what made this really effective is we didn't... people like me and many of you didn't care about saving the world. We only cared about saving ourselves. And that was a huge aspect of how we got through this thing. We just used the internet and things like that as a means of communication. And when videos and stuff were made about it, the majority of us, all of us, when the information was delivered, even when it was dark, it was all useful information. Very useful. And except it was out and out doom porn. It was out and out doom porn. There was no... It was just damaging to people. And I'm not saying that I've had someone employed. I said about Dave Cullen. No, Dave doesn't do doom porn. I've always made that clear. Dave delivers. It's sober. I put the word sobering, but he delivers absolute facts and information. He doesn't do it for the sake of tormenting people. He's delivering intelligence that we can actually use and work with. That's not. I'm talking about there's others out there who absolutely live in. They just get their jollies off bringing people down to the and as deep in depression and hopelessness and despondency as they can go. There was a few of them out there, but in the majority of us, we were just really supporting one another. That's how I always felt about it anyway. I always felt I was supporting you guys, and you guys were supporting me and supporting each other. And we were almost like, troops on a battlefield who didn't know one another, but we were in the trenches, and I might do that down to you guys, and you did that back up to me. We're on the one's team. We didn't have to know each other's names personally, but we had an understanding. That's what the real meaning of empathy is. That empathy is not the same thing as compassion. Empathy is a word that people don't fully understand. Empathy means like fascism, empathy means a common understanding between people. It doesn't mean compassion. It's often confused with compassion. It can be compassionate, but it's it can be, you can have empathic compassion, but it's compassion and empathy are two different things. There you go, you learn something. Look it up. So I had Barry talk about eating the insects there. Look, that's all they're collapsing into psychosis. That's all you're dealing with here. They're collapsing into psychosis. Just see, when someone's having a nervous breakdown, he might start doing mad things. Like, or someone has a terrible thing, like conflicting them really badly. They're dying. They've been told they've got a week to live, and they do something like, book a backpacking holiday in Tibet when they can barely move, or they're going into a severe nervous breakdown, and they do something like start building a swimming pool in their backyard, and people are like, "What are you doing that for?" And that's what them eating the bugs is like. They're falling and tumbling into psychosis. So you should be feel very positive about all this stuff. I'm like I said the other day in Tuam. So I was talking to someone about the history of the harp. The musical instrument, the harp, not the beer. See, are you stereotyping me? But I was thinking about the musical instrument, the harp, and how harps were invented, where they were bows, a bow for firing arrows. And someone went, and someone said, if I add more strings to my bow, would it create different tones and pitches? So they added extra strings and found that they had a musical scale, and that's the story, what I've been told, of how the harps were invented, the musical instrument, the harp was invented. The harp was invented because the arrow was no longer needed for war. So they made music instead in time of peace. Well, I would say I'm optimistic about the future, but I would change your harp into a bow, just in case. So take care. Love yous all. You're fucking beautiful. I think you're brilliant. And I'm really glad to have you all in my life. Sanguine? No